Tonight, a massive manhunt for an American soldier held by the Taliban. Video released by his captors angers the Secretary of Defense.
My personal reaction was one of disgust.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, the president takes on critics of his health care reform plan. He vows to move forward and says he's trying to fix a system that's breaking American families. And 40 years ago today, as man set foot on the moon, Walter Cronkite may have been the happiest man on Earth.
Right now, after seeing it happen, knowing that it happened, it still seems like a dream.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And good evening, everyone. We begin tonight in Afghanistan, where an all-out search is underway for a U.S. Army private who's being held captive by the Taliban. Bo Bergdahl is 23 from a small town in Idaho where he worked in a coffee shop before joining the Army last year. Today, as Defense Secretary Robert Gates vowed to continue the manhunt, a grim milestone was reached. 4 Americans in uniform were killed by a roadside bomb in eastern Afghanistan today. At least 30 Americans have died in July, making it the deadliest month for U.S. forces since the invasion in 2001. The latest now on the search for Private Bergdahl. From Afghanistan, here's Mandy Clark.
The images of captured Private Bo Bergdahl left the Secretary of Defense expressing contempt for Taliban tactics.
Our commanders are sparing no effort to find this young soldier. And I also would say my personal reaction was one of disgust at the exploitation of this young man.
In Bergdahl's hometown of Haley, Idaho, residents showed their support with ribbons and prayers. Today, the town sheriff spoke for the soldier's family.
We have been overwhelmed with the outpouring of support and concern toward Bo and our family. As you know, the situation is extremely difficult for everyone involved.
Neighbors and others in the tight-knit community had known for weeks that Bergdahl had been captured, but remained quiet out of respect for his family. The video shows the 23-year-old clearly under duress, admonishing the U.S. presence in Afghanistan, and becoming noticeably shaken when talking about his girlfriend and family.
I have my girlfriend who is hoping to marry. I have a very, very good family.
The U.S. military has launched its biggest operation in eastern Afghanistan to find him, led by the 3,000-strong Task Force Yukon, Private Bergdahl's very own unit. The soldier went missing last month. In the video, he says he was captured after lagging behind on patrol. He does appear to be in good health. He's shown eating and says he's been, quote, treated like a guest. CBS News consultant on terrorism Jerry Van Dyke says the appearance of good treatment is the Taliban's way of taunting the U.S.
It's a message to the United States and to its allies and to the American public to say that we treat soldiers better than you do.
And it may be some small comfort to the family still hoping for a safe return. Mandy Clark, CBS News, Kabul.
One more military note. Secretary Gates said today he plans to make the Army bigger. Right now it has 547,000 soldiers, but Gates says the Army's being stretched thin, fighting 2 wars, so another 22,000 will be recruited over the next year. Turning to the home front now, President Obama is waging an all-out battle for health care reform. The fear at the White House is he's losing momentum as the opposition gets louder. So if you thought you've been seeing a lot of the president on television already, get ready for a whole lot more. Here's our chief White House correspondent, Chip Reed.
With congressional opposition on the rise and public support slipping, the president today tried to get health care reform back on track.
There are too many families who will be crushed if insurance premiums continue to rise 3 times as fast as wages.
The Democratic Party came to his support.
When I lost my job, I lost my health insurance, too.
With TV ads aimed at wavering senators, mostly Democrats, in 8 states.
It's time.
It's time for health care reform.
Republicans fired back with their own ad campaign.
A risky experiment with our health care.
And in some of his harshest comments yet,
it's too much, too fast.
Republican Party Chairman Michael Steele said the president's plan for a public insurance option is socialism.
This reckless approach is an ill-conceived attempt to push through an experiment, and all of us should be scared to death.
In one of the most incendiary comments, Republican Senator Jim DeMint, in a conference call with conservative activists, recently said,
"If we're able to stop Obama on this, it will be his Waterloo. It will break him."
Today, the president accused DeMint of using the health reform debate for political gain.
This isn't about politics. This is about a health care system that is breaking America's families.
But it's not just Republicans who are giving the president headaches.
We need to slow down.
Dozens of conservative House Democrats are threatening to block the bill if it doesn't slash the expected cost of well over $1 trillion.
Develop a bill that can really result in the kind of savings that will cause health care to stop growing.
Others are resisting the president's goal of passing a bill by early August.
Sometimes when you move too quickly, you make mistakes. That, to me, is the big concern.
Today, the president said he still wants the House and Senate to meet that August deadline for passing their initial bills, but he gave himself a little bit of wiggle room. He said that it may spill over a few days or a week. Katie?
So is there a growing feeling at the White House, Chip, that the president might have set expectations for expediency a bit too high?
Well, you would certainly think so, Katie, with the polls coming down, with the criticism just flowing in from Republicans and even some Democrats really nervous about the bill and this timeline. You would think that they would back off, but Katie, they have not. They really are as confident as ever here at the White House that this is going to pass, and if it doesn't pass right on the deadline, it won't be much behind it.
All right, Chip Reid at the White House tonight. Thank you, Chip. Senator Edward Kennedy, who is battling brain cancer, is too ill to lead the fight for health care reform in person, but he is working behind the scenes. In Newsweek magazine, he writes, "I am resolved to see to it this year that we create a system to ensure that someday, when there is a cure for the disease I now have, no American who needs it will be denied it." And tomorrow night, I'll have an interview with President Obama about health care reform and much more. And on this 40th anniversary of the first moonwalk, the president welcomed the crew of Apollo 11 to the White House to talk about the future of spaceflight. A CBS News poll out today says a majority of Americans believe the U.S. should send a mission to Mars. But as Bob Orr reports, don't hold your breath.
40 years after those triumphant first steps on the moon.
That's one small step for man.
Astronauts Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and Neil Armstrong were honored by a president who was 7 years old when Apollo 11 made history.
The moment in which mankind finally was untethered from this planet.
But the celebration is tempered by disappointment that America, in the 4 decades since, has not probed deeper into the unknown. Buzz Aldrin, who was the second man to step on the moon, wants America to be first on Mars.
To me, exploration is going to someplace you haven't been before.
Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon in 1972, says the spirit of Apollo has been lost.
And I really believed that we'd be back to the moon by the end of that decade and on our way to Mars by the turn of the century.
But the achievements have been less grandiose. The shuttle program, which today featured a little noted spacewalk outside the International Space Station, is set to end next year. While the president has called for a return to the moon by 2020, funding is already being cut. Budget pressures, though, are nothing new. Even President Kennedy bemoaned the expense of racing Russia to the moon.
Everything that we do ought to really be tied into getting onto the moon and ahead of the Russians. Otherwise, we shouldn't be spending this kind of money because I'm not that interested in space.
For America, the moon landing was the payoff. Aldrin says it should have been the beginning.
We lit the engine and we opened the door to the future of exploration.
40 years later, that future seems less clear than it was that July night in 1969. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News.
What a moment. Man on the way to the moon.
The man who guided us to the moon and back. But up next, Flint, Michigan, tearing things down in order to build up a struggling city.
The CBS Evening News is sponsored by U.S. Bank. All of us serving you. Member FDIC.
The $700 billion taxpayer bailout of the financial and automobile industries could cost you a lot more than that. The government's chief watchdog of the bailout will tell Congress tomorrow that worst case scenario, the price tag could total $23.7 trillion. In other economic news, the index of leading indicators is up for the third straight month. That's the latest sign that we could see an end of the recession later this year. But right now, unemployment nationwide is 9.5%, and in Michigan, it's much worse, more than 15%. Devastating not just for adults, but their children as well. In partnership with USA Today, national correspondent Jim Axelrod continues our series, CBS Reports, Children of the Recession.
Flint, Michigan is a tough place for anyone to live these days, but it's the kids on this crime-riddled block of New York Avenue who just may have it the toughest.
I don't feel safe walking down the street at any time of the day.
Because what might you run into, or who might you run into?
People that try to, pick you up or try to kidnap you or something.
11-year-old Alexis Graham doesn't feel safe enough to ride her bike down the street, a lifetime away from when her mother and grandmother were growing up on this block. That's when Flint had 80,000 GM jobs. Today it's 7,500. And when the jobs left, so did the people, leaving this once proud neighborhood to rot.
You got hoodlums, you got crackheads, you got a little bit of everything.
Alexis helped her mother make these signs to run the riffraff off the block. But the signs alone can't stop the flames that scare her at night when drug gangs set the abandoned homes on fire.
And the brown house down the street was in flames higher than the house next door to us. Someone torched it.
Just turn it into something green.
Genesee County Treasurer Dan Kildee has a radical idea to make life better for the children of Flint. Bulldozing 6,000 empty homes and turning those lots into places where they can play.
You know, it's hard, but I don't see an alternative. And I think the people that we ought to think about are the folks who live on this street who are really trying.
Whether Flint shrinks or grows, the future here will be shaped even more significantly by the kinds of jobs the next generation is qualified for. And that raises an even larger challenge of changing a culture. A recent study here shows just 27% of parents think their kids need more than a high school education.
This isn't 1969 anymore. This isn't when the man landed on the moon and GM ruled and you didn't have to worry about competition.
State Superintendent of Schools Michael Flanagan is raising Michigan's educational standards. One of just 8 states with no graduation requirements 5 years ago, Michigan is now recognized for having one of the most rigorous set of requirements, including Algebra 2, biology, either chemistry or physics, and a foreign language.
All we had to do before to graduate from high school was take a civics course. I mean, it was brain dead.
Tyler McDougall, a high school sophomore from Flint, is in the second class of students who'll have to meet the tougher requirements to graduate.
How hard is this math?
It's pretty hard.
Tyler is from a 5th-generation GM family. He once wanted to follow in their footsteps, but now he wants to be an ophthalmologist.
I just didn't want to have to put my family, when I get older, through the same things.
In Michigan, the bulldozers are busy.
So you kind of like this idea of maybe getting rid of the abandoned houses too, huh?
Because we'll have more room to play.
Demolishing bad neighborhoods, along with old ways of thinking, to build better futures for their children. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Flint.
At a time when there were a lot of other problems in this country and elsewhere, people were downcast. Everybody there was upcast. We were looking toward the stars, looking toward the moon.
The stars, the moon, the earth, they all seem to be aligned on this anniversary of the lunar landing. It even falls on the day named in honor of the moon, Monday. And it comes as we're remembering the man who took us there and back, Walter Cronkite. So we leave you tonight with Walter and man's greatest achievement in space.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Good morning. Man is about to launch himself on a trip to the moon from this Florida launch complex. Astronauts Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin sitting there atop the great Saturn rocket in their command module. My palms are sweaty.
You're now a member of the mission launch team.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
What a moment. Man on the way to the moon. It seemed that the whole world stopped as man set out on the adventure to escape from his own planet and to set foot on a distant one.
Hello there, Earthlink. Hello there. 11, Houston, if that's not the Earth, we're in trouble.
The lunar module cutting itself free from the command module, beginning the maneuvers which should place it on the surface of the moon.
Roger, Eagle, contact. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings. Houston, you're a go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing. 30 feet, 2.5 down. We're drifting to the right a little. 30 seconds.
Oh, jeez.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We're home.
Man on the moon.
Boy.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute.
There he is. There's a foot coming down the step.
I'm at the foot of the ladder.
Armstrong is on the moon. Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American, standing on the surface of the moon on this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, for thousands of years now, it's been man's dream to walk on the moon. Right now, after seeing it happen, knowing that it happened, it still seems like a dream.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. This certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honor for us to be able to participate here today. We think that you've done a magnificent job up there today. Over. Thank you very much. It's been a long day.
Man has landed there, and man has taken his first steps there. I wonder just what there is to add to that.